Hey there, this is Dean Walker here with Living Resilience, which is the website where this body of work lives, and also the Poetry of Predicament podcast. That's the YouTube channel where that part of the body of work lives. And this is going to be the first of a few different, slightly out of character uh, podcast uploads that I'm just really inclined to put out there for you. I There's some things I'm going to be doing that I haven't done in a while, and some things I haven't done at all. And the things I haven't done in a while, I've really let them go to other folks in the Doomosphere who do a really great job of, for instance, there are 4 or 5 different folks who have their own YouTube channels, and they are uh, up for doing a daily um, uh, broadcast of the most recent environmental impacts from various aspects of our business as usual predatory culture around the world. And that's, in my experience, they do it far better than I do. They're more committed to that level of engagement with the material than I am. And they're just better at it than I am. But I'm going to be putting out some of that kind of information in the next piece. Um, but this piece is going to be something that I do even less. And that is particularly a political message of some kind. I find that both the parties in the USA are mirror images of one another, and there's just as much hopelessness and despair to be found by following either one. I'm not particularly encouraged with the level of innovation and curiosity and truly inspiring leadership from either of them. And I'm obviously being tremendously ironic in that understatement of my disdain for our politics. But what I'm going to be including today is something that I found on Twitter. I'm on Twitter way more than any other social media. I find it really pleasant because I guess I'm in a little pocket where there's not the toxic exchanges and so on. It's just a remarkably positive environment. And I ran into this particular statement. It's about 10 minutes long. And it's by a guy named Matthew Cooke. And he calls it a wake up call for Republicans. And again, I find it extraordinarily clear and inspiring and inspired. And it reminds me that I guess I'm old enough now that I can remember when there was actually political commentary on a very open and public basis that made sense. It was not toxic in its delivery. It was not polarizing in its delivery, but it was actually extraordinarily thoughtful and took a stand where it did. That's what I think that Matthew Cooke has done. So in the show notes, I'll put in Matthew Cooke's uh, Twitter handle. And I just hope you'll enjoy this. And finally, why I'm doing this first out of character video in a series that will go through at least through the end of January, possibly into parts of February, is not at all that I'm not at all saying that Matthew Cooke agrees with me or condones my use of his tweet. And so I hope to meet him someday. I'll be reaching out to see if I can get an interview with Matthew Cooke. Really, what I'm putting it onto my YouTube channel, the Poetry of Predicament podcast, why I'm posting it here is that I really want my hat is off to Matthew Cooke for the boldness, the clarity, the vividness of his message at a time when we are insane as a culture as a global culture, but especially in the USA. We are just insane. And the body of work that I've been working on to address the many existential level predicaments that we're facing on this planet, including climate change, but certainly not limited to that. Uh, I really want to point to exemplars, people who are great examples of creating inspiring communication and having an ability to speak boldly, clearly, um, inspiringly. These are gifts that are much needed in our public discourse in these times. So I'm presenting Matthew Cooke as an example of someone who has done some homework, done some of the deep inner work that I am asserting we all need to be doing in these times. These are not times to binge watch on Netflix during the rest of the however months or years we're going to be laid up around the pandemic. This is time to be doing deep inner work to gain some of that agency that Matthew Cooke so beautifully expresses. And that's a big part of this body of work from Living Resilience and what we call our programs page, Deep Academy. There's all that information about how to sign up for it, an invitation to have yourself come in, check out what the materials are that we provide, and more importantly, come spend some time with us in the support meetings that we have online on a weekly basis. These are people who are expanding their capacity to be present in the face of larger and larger stressors. And I have a strong feeling, and have had such for years, that we are looking at larger and larger waves of stressors coming our way. So again, all that information's in the show notes below. I hope you enjoy this tweet from this statement from Matthew Cooke. And I look forward to seeing you or hearing from you about your desire to engage at some level with this online community of practice called Living Resilience Deep Academy. All right, enjoy.
This is a wake-up call for Republicans. America elected Joe Biden by over 7 million votes, and you're confused because you didn't see us flock to his rallies and cheer his smackdowns like we were at a pro wrestling event during a global pandemic. We don't wear matching hats or have no more malarkey flags waving from the backs of our trucks. Do you know why? Because Biden is not our tribal warlord. We believe the job of a U.S. president is to represent more than one interest group. That's why 81 million of us turned out, to stop a narcissistic personality cult that embodies all 7 of the deadly sins, most of all pride, which you've taken to levels of blasphemy, claiming your political leaders are handpicked by Jesus Christ. This country is called the United States, and we have multiple converging crises that need adult supervision. But we are being distracted trying to get control over a critical mass of you who no longer believe in reality, who've been hypnotized to fear a Joe Biden presidency whenever you hear the trigger words, radical socialist. Never mind that Biden is backed by America's billionaires whose existence depend on corporate capitalism, so your cognitive dissonance is staggering, but understandable, because the most sophisticated mass media tools ever created have eviscerated your powers of discernment. And there's a gold rush on slinging alternative facts, making millions for opportunists who've taken you for quite a ride. But you need to wake up now and start the deprogramming. The election was not stolen. All that proof you kept sharing about suitcases and duffel bags, of discarded ballots, it's all been debunked. All the affidavits claiming widespread fraud have been thrown out. Over 60 lawsuits contesting the election in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Republican states. Many of the cases overseen by Republican and Trump-appointed judges. 61 cases. Tossed out. Trump's hack attorneys are being sued or are under threat of disbarment. That's consistent with the countless criminal prosecutions of many former Trump associates. But the PR stunt worked on the tens of millions of Americans primed for mass hysteria. You succumbed to Salem witch trial levels of mental lapse, believing our elections were stolen based on spectral evidence. Dreams about krakens, which are make-believe. It's time to wake up now. Black Lives Matter is not a terrorist organization any more than Martin Luther King Jr. was a terrorist, or Gandhi, or Nelson Mandela. Peaceful protests and strikes and boycotts. That's how a society creates change without violence. Everybody reasonable knows that violence and looting and murder are wrong and counterproductive to a peaceful society. That's why everybody reasonable condemns militarized cops executing citizens over cigarettes, cell phones, driving, jogging, walking, sleeping, resisting execution. That's what Black Lives Matter has been protesting. This isn't a partisan issue. It's the largest civil rights movement in the history of the nation. You need to wake up now. If you join Black Lives Matter, then all lives will matter. If it helps you understand it better, shut your eyes, say to yourself, my life matters, and Black Lives Matter. If we unite, there's hope. We can end the savage practice of imprisoning millions of people for the crime of being black, or brown, or poor. Atoning for and correcting the mistakes of our ancestors does not mean the next logical step is white genocide. Unless you think the legitimate purpose of the criminal justice system is to protect white supremacy, like it has up until this moment, if that's your underlying premise, you're a racist. That's why you wave a Confederate flag. You just doxed yourself and you need conversion therapy. Time to wake up. There's no national Antifa network pretending to be fascist Trump supporters who want civil war. Antifa are anti-fascists who only exist right now because there are fascist Trump supporters threatening civil war. Inspired by the official Republican platform, which doesn't have anything in it other than clinical paranoia. Re-educating you to believe there's a conspiracy to seize your guns and gender identity at the same time, so you're so disoriented you can't defend yourself against a mass immigrant invasion threatening your livelihood. Come on. The real danger came from putting a recklessly uneducated man with a personality disorder in the White House, who spent his one catastrophic term branding America's democratic cities enemies of the country, while taking credit for economic growth rates he inherited from a Democrat. He and his Republican Senate, under the smokescreen of your disassociation from reality and the brand name Drain the Swamp, filled the cabinet with profiteers like themselves. Billionaires made $1 trillion while they gutted our State Department, our FBI, our CIA, our DHS, our post office. Whatever Trump touched, he wrecked. They attacked our U.S. education system. They tore down the minimal regulations that we have protecting America's water and air. They turned our already abysmal borders into a human rights crisis. They smeared America's top scientists and doctors, our healthcare system. They attacked our entire U.S. media. Their willful incompetence has been so destructive. The USA is the epicenter of the worst pandemic in 100 years. Hundreds of thousands of us are dead. Millions are hungry and struggling to survive. And their final act was a massive campaign to try to sabotage the bedrock upon which we stand, American democracy itself. This is on you, the Republican Party. The majority of white America elected a man whose business model is lying, who demands total obedience, while swindling and eventually turning on all of his employees and followers after years of abuse. You elected a perfect cult leader. Our enemies are ecstatic. Our allies are horrified because of the suicidal Republican ideology of opposing any limits on gluttony and greed. What was once a beacon of hope all over the world, American democracy, is no longer a given. Your right-wing leaders and shouting heads, they're not going to stop clawing their way down a bottomless pit of excuses to continue profiting off of selling you virtual alternate reality made up of false accusations and revenge fantasies, giving you a persecution complex they won't stop feeding no matter how many of you are driven right off the deep end. Any citizen of the United States continuing to fall for it. Some of you thinking of taking up arms against the strongest military power on earth. Others making excuses for these terrorists because you share the same beliefs. You're delusional. You don't have a political party anymore. Come back to reality. January 6th, 2021. That was your come to Jesus moment. Armed insurgents threatened to hang the vice president, kill the Speaker of the House. They dragged a cop down a flight of stairs and brutally beat another with an American flag. They killed police. A suicidal QAnon follower gave her life trying to break into the House chamber. For what? The most significant terror attack on our country since 9/11 happened because Republican radicals believe Democrats are Satan-worshiping pedophiles who stole their country, and they'd rather die than lose the protection of their leader. Defending truth and democracy and equality for all people against any tyranny, foreign and domestic, is the only thing that unites us and protects our freedoms. That's why Trump is being held accountable for his crimes, along with every congressperson, every official, every officer who conspired or continues to wage a mass deception campaign to overthrow American democracy, especially under the threat of violence. The First Amendment protects our right to express ourselves without fear of arrest. The right to free speech does not include threats of violence, and it certainly does not grant the authority to force media platforms to broadcast single-party hate propaganda that claim only its members are the real America. For the former Republican Party, who call themselves patriots, this is your wake-up call. Your nightmare of a brainwashed, radical, anti-American movement trying to destroy the country was you.